I will put myself on mute.
Okay, sounds good, Gosha, thank you. Can you hear me okay? I will assume so. So yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I know there's people joining from all over the world at a historic time. I have never lived through anything like this. Some of you on the call may or may not have, but either way, it is quite unique and quite unprecedented. So my name is Nick Laul. I'm the Director of Product Management within Pearson English Assessment specifically. And essentially what that means is me and my team work with students, teachers, institutional customers, corporations to develop English assessment products. So we work with you and folks like you to understand what are the market needs and hopefully develop product to help meet those needs. So yeah, I do want to acknowledge that we're meeting here today because it's an unprecedented time for us, and we haven't experienced anything like this, and it's an opportunity for us to do things a little bit differently, and that's one of the reasons we're talking about Versant at home and home-based testing. But keeping in mind that in times like this, presentations like this and discussions like this are many times secondary to what we do. So I'm at my home. My wife is in the other room. My children are here, so hopefully no one's going to walk through the door. But do keep in mind that right, we have communities, people, families around us that we care very deeply about, and I hope you and your families and friends and communities stay safe, and hopefully this crisis will be behind us, hopefully sooner rather than later. So do take care. I wanted to certainly acknowledge that everyone's taken time from their busy days and from the hectic times to listen to me speak. So hopefully over the next 35 or 40 minutes, I can give you a little bit of a sense for what we do on the Versant team, and you can determine how it fits into kind of helping you and your students make progress on the English front. So like I mentioned, it's a 30 to 40 minute presentation. Please send questions your way. We'll have plenty of time to answer those at the end. There we go. So, so while I represent the English assessment business and I work in assessment, we are Pearson English, and we certainly understand and appreciate that English is a solution. It is a holistic approach to teaching English. It is not just courseware or assessment or anything else by itself. And what we do at Pearson is ensure that we work collaboratively to bring a full assessment solution along with courseware development, professional development and services and standards to our customers. And so just let me spend just a couple of minutes providing context to what this is. Right, so obviously Pearson English is a large courseware provider. We service over 16 million learners annually. We service over 16 million learners annually. And alongside that, we work very closely with our courseware team. The assessment team and courseware teams work closely to ensure that when people are studying, that we have assessments to support and monitor learning and progress. We have quite a types of assessment about here shortly. We have unprecedented of assessments and score items. And alongside that, one of the key value propositions that brings assessment and courseware together is the global scale of English. So it's basically a extension and adds a little bit more granularity to the common European framework. That is the standard that we use. Richer details and more information about English achievement and English learning objectives, so you can start to marry up courseware and assessment and use both of those along a single scale and use similar learning objectives. So that whole package comes together to ensure that when you're getting something from Pearson, is a very holistic approach, and the scale of global scale of English we're really proud of. Thousands of learning objectives that have a meaning in and for English assessment, we the portfolio on the role that in the learning journey, right? So we have we segmented it through place, benchmark, certify, and verify. And each of these assessments do something different. And it's really important to make sure that we're picking the right assessment because it is an important of how our students assessments, but they do so different in which you're measuring it. The result is the most important. So on the left side, mark right. So stake is all about getting off on the right foot, right? It could be placement in terms of the right class. It could be placement in terms of a job. It could be placement in terms of entrance into a program. And that's the way we think about it. That's the job that that placement test is doing. On the other hand, when students learning and are learning English in the classroom, how do we make sure that they are actually attaining the levels and learning English? Well, that's where our benchmark suite of assessments, and these are our course agnostic assessments that go alongside whatever you're doing in the classroom, so that you can use an independent proficiency monitor to ensure that the student is learning what you're teaching them. On the right spectrum are in the verify category. These are what I would call, right? So of product the world that accept PT academic for entrance into post-secondary. We have Department of Education, immigration department accept as well. It's taken in a very controlled environment. It's taken in an environment where you have hundreds of centers all around the world with high security, where we monitor in session for everyone walking and so forth. So which is to immigrate, so the person, their credential. So that, right, the lower talk about is for like that can be used in a multitude of different environments. What I do is provide context around our guiding principles, because you'll see this referenced throughout my presentation. Right, so this is what I would call pillars, our guiding principles on the product development side. Right, so when we build a new product, or when we try and with our customers to determine what we're going to build, these are the things that we think about of the work we do, especially because we have a frame of reference that is guided by these principles. The first really around access and availability. So that is about making that the product model allows the of the customer. Our high stakes tests, because we can be taken nearly every day of the year. That's important because we know people are applying for universities or pursuing immigration at different times of the year. So we want that it is a demand. However, and it needs to be a secure environment. So we balance that. On the other hand, our classroom-based assessments are developed in a way that is light touch. So you don't have to do huge installations of software. It can be in a classroom environment, can be delivered within a class. So it can't be 2 hours, has to be 40 or less as an example. So that's kind of a frame of reference around access and availability. I mentioned a little bit about product fit, right? that is critical because, many times talk to parents and they talk about assessment, they gravitate to the score, they gravitate to the number, they gravitate to the grade. In some cases, that is critical, but the grade is on the score report, the data that we provide. Make sure that the product that is being selected for the right purposes, and any inferences that are being drawn are done so with clarity. And that kind of we keep in mind if we're serving a certain product that needs to be in a high stakes scenario. I would take a different approach to product development than something that needs to be in classroom. Either way, any and all products that we develop now and going forward use our AI-based spoken and written scoring capabilities, right? And so that produces fast and fair scoring decisions. So we can evaluate spoken and written language and produce scores nearly instantaneously. It removes bias, it removes the need for intervention. That is one of the key things we can universities and companies and institutions with information to make quick hiring and placement decisions. Lastly, especially in this digital world, data is critical, right? And data not just for sake of collecting data and producing data, but data to track, measure, and compare, and most importantly, to inform teaching, right? So a lot of the work we do is around enabling our teachers, our institutions, parents to get access to information about their students so they can personalize learning. If everyone learns differently, and if you're a teacher and you have a large class, how do you make sure that you are using data and assessment results to meaningfully impact what you are teaching in the class? So I'm going to talk about the Versant English Placement Test. It's a specific product within the Versant portfolio, right? So Versant it's a family of products. And the Versant English Placement Test is a 4 skills product, but we also have spoken tests or speaking only tests, writing only tests, and other assessments. Now, some of the capabilities are universal throughout the Versant portfolio. So those tests can be delivered online or offline, right? So when I talk online, it's all about a browser-based delivery model that doesn't require installation of software, right? All you need is a web browser, internet connectivity, and a microphone, and you can take a 4 skills assessment. Obviously, you need a keyboard as well, but essentially you need a computer with a browser and internet connectivity. On the other hand, if you have a challenging internet setup, you can deliver it offline, right? It requires a download on your computer, but we have that capability as well. You can do it on-site or off-site, right? So it gives you flexibility, talking about access and availability. It gives you flexibility in the delivery model. These tests are less than an hour long, right? So the Versant English Placement Test is a 4 skills test. It's 50 minutes long. But if you want a spoken test, it's as little as 15 or 20 minutes long. But either way, we use our AI-based scoring capabilities that I referenced earlier. And the goal really is to produce results that are reliable and valid within seconds and minutes of test completion. And the intent is to scale assessments so that institutions that are relying on English to move students forward or to make quick decisions have access to the information they need in a timely manner. So let's talk about how Versant is used in educational settings. And many of you are already familiar with Versant or you have used similar assessments, but it's really about admissions and placement, right, for language programs. So how do I give an assessment to somebody coming in, and in many cases in a large scale or a distributed delivery model to ensure and measure English language. So in some cases it's used for tracking progress and measure learning goals, right? So we have, and I'll talk about a case study later today or later in this in the hour, where we have a program that uses Pearson for tracking and measuring progress. as well as for exit testing. So there's a lot of flexibility in how the test is used. It's used for establishing line and verifying language capabilities for students before they enter projects, right? So if you're working on a cross-functional global project and you want to make sure that there's a minimum threshold of language attainment, you could use VEPT, you could use the Versant product. And we also have customers using Versant to verify the English levels of teachers and staff, right? So that becomes a benchmark that says, if I am teaching students that are C1 students, how do I make sure that the teachers that I have a C2 on the CEFR, so I can effectively coach and teach them. So there's a variety of ways you can use Versant in educational settings. And essentially what Versant does is it saves time and it scales, right? It doesn't require human intervention. There's an easy administration process. And all you need is the technology to deliver the test. You don't need to establish human scoring. You don't have to train raters all around the world to say, are we judging and adjudicating students at the same level? It's a portfolio that's been that we've had in our Pearson English suite for over 10 years. This capability around AI, we deliver more than 3 million tests using that annually, and it scales for young learners and adults globally. And that's the great thing about the AI system that allows us to save time, save the need for human intervention, and reduce turnaround scores and enable faster decisions. That is the core value proposition of Versant, the flexibility of the delivery, and anytime, anywhere. So you can test students globally in a consistent, reliable, and valid manner. And we provide the data quickly to you, so you can make a decision quickly, and the student isn't left hanging and doesn't have anxiety while you wait for 2 days, 5 days, 10 days, or 2 weeks to receive scores. So the Versant English Placement Test. So like I mentioned, it's a 50-minute test, browser-based or offline. It has 9 different task types. Now, one of the things that we do with our assessments is we use communicative English and integrated item types, where we're measuring integrated skills. And what that allows us to do is do kind of a multi-trait scoring capabilities, right? Where the computer can score lots of different traits within the different questions and tasks that we provide. That allows us to keep our test short, right? And much more accessible. So if you were to kind of use less complicated item types as an example, you may not be able to measure as many traits, and you might need to increase the length of test. So we have things like read alouds, conversations where you listen to a conversation and you summarize it. So we're measuring your ability to listen, comprehend, and summarize, as an example. Passage reconstruction. So these are the kind of complex item types that a complex scoring algorithm allows you to do, is to effectively measure English in conversational sense quite quickly. And really proud of the way our English tests use integrated skills to measure conversational English. So in order to reach those fast and fair scoring decisions, right? Like I mentioned, we use our AI-based scoring model, right? It returns scores nearly instantaneously. And of course, score return time is important, right? The other things that are more important is removing bias and scaling. And what the AI-based engine that we have, it is trained with human markers, right? So what the system essentially does is we feed the system lots of expert ratings, and the system learns, and the system scales by learning. So it's not the computer determining your language capabilities, the computer learning how other experts would have scored certain traits and language, and what the computer does is, and the AI system does is, it replicates that. Never gets tired. It doesn't care about your accent, right? And that's the beauty of removing bias. So you can be confident that it is a reliable and valid test. You deliver millions of these tests across different test constructs and global populations every year. We've done this for young learners, right? So 6, 7, 8-year-olds, where they have a gamified assessment, which feels like a game, but it's actually a 4 skills integrated assessment where we're measuring all 4 English language sub-skills and providing scores nearly instantaneously. And we do it in the corporate environment where we have loads of corporations delivering over 1 million tests a year because they rely on Versant to return scores reliably and validly across the globe, across different testing populations, because they're making high stakes hiring decisions based on those. The other thing to keep in mind is it's not a superficial system, right? It doesn't look for keywords, right? That's not what it's doing. Essentially what it's doing is it's trying to understand the deeper meaning of the language that someone is producing, right? It evaluates your language in terms of multi-trait abilities. It breaks down the spoken word to look at various traits within your speech. And essentially what the computer is able to do is, because it can break down kind of your speech or your written language, it can actually evaluate your speaking across more dimensions than most humans can. And that's the beauty of using integrated skills that and the AI-based scoring mechanism, so that when I speak a sentence, a human might be able to evaluate it on based on certain things like fluency or pronunciation. But now what the AI-based scoring mechanism is doing is evaluating it on more dimensions than just that. And that's what allows this system to be so wonderful that it's not only does it scale, but it actually does it effectively, and it's not gamed by just putting in certain keywords, or if you think you can game the system by saying a few things or things a certain way. That's not how the system works. There's a lot of research we've done over the last 10 years, right? So there are deep validity and validation reports that are available on our website that talk both about each of the tests that we have, but also about the AI-based scoring capabilities. We have things around inter-rater reliability, split half reliability, so you can start to see that this is a system that has been tried and tested. Like I mentioned, we do over 3 million tests that we score using this capability today on an annual basis. So it is a system that scales well, that has incredible amount of score consistency across the different populations. And that's important because the customers we serve, and a big benefit of Versant is global delivery, right? It's about ensuring that institutions can have a consistent delivery model, scoring model, and confidence that the assessment that they take is the same, whether it's taken in China, India, the UK, US, Canada, Brazil, wherever in the world. And that is consistency in scoring. And that's what we do, regardless of what your accent is. As long as you can produce English and you take that assessment, we are able to score it consistently globally. And it does that without the need for additional humans. You don't have to worry about whether you have 10 tests today or 1,000 tests today. The computer can handle it. And not only does it handle it, it still produces results within minutes. That standardization is critical. You don't have to worry about additional human standardization and yet have confidence that the score you're going to receive is consistent no matter where you're taking it, and no matter the time of day or the time of night you might be taking the test. In terms of access and availability, right, I touched about this a little bit earlier, right? It's about making sure that in some cases where you have good internet connectivity, that you can deliver it online, right? It's a browser-based light touch delivery mechanism. You launch a browser, you have access to a keyboard and the internet, and you can take the test, and within a few minutes of completion, you get your score reports online. And the administrator gets it through the portal. On the other hand, if you have large-scale testing happening and you have thousands of people you'd like to test in an offline environment, we have that as well. But above and beyond that, what we are doing is we are launching, we recently launched online monitoring and proctoring for added verification. right? So this is to provide a additional layer of authenticity and security for people that so demand that. Not everyone needs this, not everybody wants it, not everyone feels the need to include this, but if you do want online monitoring and proctoring, it is something that we recently launched in pilot a couple of months back, and now we're expanding the pilot to include more countries and more institutions. So the reason it was launched was because institutions and corporations came to us and said, we have large-scale student recruitment and we want a added layer of security into the recruitment process. So how can you help us? And essentially what we've done is we have launched a browser-based remote online monitoring capability, partnering with a third party. And within that, we have embedded the Versant English Placement Test. So what it does is when you launch the browser, it initiates your webcam and your audio capture, and it records the audio and video during the testing session, and it makes it available to the admin. And on the back end, what it does is it uses the AI-powered proctoring analysis, and it flags aberrant behavior. So you don't have to monitor it. What the system is doing is it is looking at multiple dimensions and determining, is the delivery happening in a kosher environment, or are there things happening that are unusual and should be flagged for further review. So the kinds of things it looks for is image monitoring, right? So when you start the test, it takes a photograph. And then along the way, it takes additional photographs as you're taking the test. And at the end of it, what you can see on the right side is the admin platform. It starts to identify and inform the admin that there's suspicious activity happening, or there's not suspicious activity happening. So you as an admin have the information in front of you to make the determination as to whether you feel comfortable with the score that the student has achieved, and they have achieved it in the sanctity of a reasonable delivery environment. In addition to that, it records video and audio, right? And if it starts to see additional people in the frame, if it starts to feel different sounds coming in that are not and above and beyond the sound of the student taking the test, it flags that as well. And then the last thing it does is it monitors the browser. So if you open up a different tab, or you open up a different window and start to write things, or you close down the window or minimize the window and start working on something else, it flags that as well. So along those different dimensions, what the remote monitoring solution is doing is capturing, essentially capturing the 50-minute session that you have, and making determination as to whether there is behavior that the administrator should be concerned about. If there is, then it identifies it so the administrator can watch the recording or watch portions of the recording, and then determine if there is something that they should be suspicious about and whether they should accept or deny the student score. So we're super excited about that. Like I said, it's in pilot mode, and we've launched it in 3 different countries, and it's going quite well. It's a model that scales, right? So it's GDPR compliant, so you don't have to worry about the sanctity of the data, right? So we adhere to the highest standards in terms of data management and privacy, and we're excited to expand that globally because we think that there's more of a need for a online monitoring and security model than we have potentially had in the past. So let me talk a little bit about, we talked a little bit about access, we've talked about fair decisions. Let's talk a little bit about meaningful results and how do we make sure that the information you get from a Versant test is something that you can trust. So with every student's score, we provide detailed score reports. And those detailed score reports have summaries, right, tied to performance descriptors, so you can really understand what the underlying score is telling you. But in addition to the summaries, we also provide concordance to some of the other tests, IELTS, TOEFL, and the Common European Framework. So today, if you're using a Common European Framework of B2, you can look at the equivalent Versant score and determine what that means. Or if you're using an IELTS score, you can look at the equivalent of that and determine what the Versant score would be to have a similar achievement. But what I'm super excited about is the next 6 months, we are launching the global scale of English within our Versant product. And essentially what that's going to do is provide much more granular learning objectives tied to achievement, right? So when you score something of, you score an X on the test, what does that actually mean in terms of what you can do? And that mean in terms of you should be doing and learning English. And what the global scale of objectives allow us to do is provide a level of granularity to enable teachers to personalize learning either at student level or class level. And B, it's also going to provide targeted activities so that they, if somebody scored a 62, here on listening, here are the types of activities based on their performance that you would want to focus on within certain courseware. So we're super excited about this. We launched something similar for a young learners product last year. It's been really well received because what it's allowed teachers to do is really scale personalization of learning. So you can take cohorts from your classroom or cohorts of people that you are, and start to really focus the efforts within the classroom. Just an example of a score. Like I said, this score significant response and what you richer detail around language description, score mappings, and activities that you should. So I look forward to that by late summer. And the last piece, how do we use data informed decisions, right? So the admin capabilities we have today are strong, right? So the administrator has access to the admin dashboard, they can assign tests, view score reports, so on and so forth. But along with the new score reports launching in the next 6 months, we're launching a much more powerful, richer administration platform. It's going to do all the things that I just mentioned, but what above and beyond what it's going to do is it's going to have powerful grouping and chain functionality. So you can start measuring and monitoring cohorts, right? Because in some cases you might have a cohort taking Versant as a progress monitor or as an exit test. How are my students doing? How have the scores changed? That's the capability we are bringing to bear. So you don't have to worry about doing it offline. You don't have to worry about downloading the raw data and manipulating it yourself. We're able to provide it and look at a cohort of students and see how their speaking scores have changed. How have the overall scores changed? What did you focus on in the last unit, and has it made an impact in their overall score, the speaking score? So I'm super excited about that because this is the power of digital that we can we are bringing there to really make it easier for institutions and teachers to personalize learning and to manage their students. Let me walk you through a few case studies. Today we have loads of people using Versant, deliver over close to 1.5 million around the world. And this is a small list of educational customers, right? A pretty list of corporates as well, specifically within education. We have a few different case studies to highlight, and they're used, and Versant is used for different uses. So out of Australia, uses VET, Versant English Placement Test, for right, and they use test to determine whether someone needs remedial education or whether they can move into direct university entry. And they need a scalable test because they're delivering this test in 80 different countries each, and they have rolling cohorts. People are coming in different ways. How do we make sure we have a systematic and a consistent, a scalable way to measure 10,000 no matter where their test, time of day their test, time of year they're testing. because that they're receiving consistent results no matter when, where, and how they are delivering the test. The next is a university out of the premier science university, technology universities, and students measure their English proficiency at the university. They enjoy the implementation, the value-based delivery. Pearson English, along with some teaching, high stakes academic exit tests, those that are graduating. That's just an example of what comes into for university entry, and then how you can either remediate or upskill students and improve their English, and then you use another Pearson test in a high stakes environment for those that are ready to graduate. And the last solution is a great one, because this is also from a private language school, but this is an intense English private language school out of Japan, right? So Trias out of Japan uses the VEPT product, and they use it as a progress monitor. So they are an intense English language program for professionals, right? So these are people working in companies in Japan that need to improve their English language skills to be able to get promoted, to be able to travel and work with their colleagues or with partners in other parts of the world where English is the primary medium of conversation. And they use VEPT as a progress monitor and to inform teaching and for exit testing. So they will take VEPT several times over the year, and the instructor uses the data that they get from VEPT to personalize and craft a study plan and monitor progress. And as you can see on the graph on the left, that's how they track and measure student success. So that's just an example of kind of three different examples of how different types of customers all over the world are using VEPT in very different scenarios. So that's really the extent of the content that I have to share, right? So what I want you to leave with is, right, Versant is a suite of products. VEPT is a product, and that VEPT is a 4 skills product that leverages our AI-based capabilities to allow you to scale delivery, to allow you to have flexibility in delivery wherever you want to do it, including some of the remote proctoring solutions we're just launching. And lastly, that it is a valid and reliable test where we deliver millions of them every year to various customers, no matter where they are in the world. So at the end of this webinar, you will all be receiving a free VEPT test, so you can try it for yourself, right? So like I said, it's a web-based test. So as long as you have a browser and a computer and a headset, you should be able to take the test without a problem. Remember to take it in a controlled environment, right? Because if the sanctity of the testing environment is not maintained, the computer is not going to be able to record your audio. We're not going to be able to grade it. So it is dependent on making sure that we don't have children running in the background, or that you're not taking it out in the street or in your backyard while there's an airplane flying above your head. Those are the kind of things that you have to watch out for. But as long as there aren't distractions in the environment, you will get a score nearly instantaneously. Feel free to reach out to your sales rep or somebody you've worked with in the past with Pearson if you have and want to learn more about our remote monitoring capabilities, or feel free to contact me directly and I will be happy to assist you any way I can. I'm ready for questions.
Great, Nick, thank you. So we did have some audio issues here and there, unfortunately, but we do have some questions. So one of the questions is, can the test be taken on a mobile device? So like a phone or a tablet?
Yeah, that's a good question. So some Versant tests can be taken on a phone. So we have a speaking test, which can be taken through an app that we have. The Versant English Placement Test, the 4 skills test, really cannot, because if you start looking at some of the types of questions, and some of the interaction that is required in terms of typing and response that's required, I don't think the environment on a mobile device is good enough for us to have confidence that it is able to effectively measure someone's English language capabilities. I think some people would be hampered by taking the test on a mobile device.
Okay, thank you. Another question is about the pilot that you are running or are running. Was this the pilot you mentioned? Was this piloted in the US? And if not, will it be piloted in the US? And are you looking for programs that might be interested in a pilot?
Yeah, no, we're absolutely looking for programs. So the pilot was actually started in 3 countries, in Asia and Europe, and we are looking to expand in the US and Canada. We do have customers that are interested in these capabilities in the US and in Canada, and if you are as well, do reach out, and we're absolutely looking to expand the pilot and see how it fares. We have really good confidence that it'll work just fine based on data we've seen out of France and Japan and Philippines and other places. But yes, definitely looking for more participants and more feedback.
Great. Yeah. So to follow up on that, so if there are any US-based programs that are interested, you can reach out using the email that I used to send you the webinar registration. Okay. Another question is about the test integrity for the offline test and the at-home test. So maybe you can kind of quickly summarize that in case for some people lost their audio.
Yeah, of course. So in terms of testing integrity, right? I mean, what Versant tries to do is, so I should clarify, it is an item bank based test, right? So we have a large item bank, and the tests are built on the fly. So people aren't taking the same test, right? They're taking the Versant English Placement Test, but they're not getting the same questions, and they're certainly not getting them in the same order, sitting next to each other. And the goal of our Versant suite is to be able to provide a balance between kind of access and security, right? So I'll give you an example of how different customers use the test. Now, if you want a high stakes test, right, where you're monitoring the student, where you're checking ID, you're making sure they're not taking anything with them into a test center, then a test center delivered test is the right thing, right? Because you want a test that you have complete confidence around the sanctity of the environment and the security and the identity of the student. Versant doesn't do that, right? What it does do is it provides you an online proctoring model where you are able to identify aberrant behavior, right? So if you have other people taking the test, if you have people, if you're copying answers from somewhere else, or if you have other people speaking into it, or other people are telling you the answers, it captures that. And it makes that available to the administrator through the admin platform, the pilot that I just mentioned. On the other hand, some of the institutions in the US and Canada, as an example, use it as a placement and entry test when students come in the door, right? So they will actually sit the student down and they will monitor and proctor the student. And that's one way to maintain security. So you're actually walking into a computer lab and you're taking it down, taking the test while sitting in front of a proctor or a receptionist or administrator. We have other institutions that are not proctoring the test, right? Because they're using it for lower stakes placement, where they are comfortable, where they want access and availability as their primary criteria, and security would hamper or reduce access to the test. So it has the flexibility to be used in different models, from home-based without any level of security, to home-based with a level of online proctoring, to site-based where someone is sitting and watching over you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that explanation, Nick. So the question is, another question is about scoring speaking. You know, how does the system score not only, you know, the recognize the different accents, but also scoring, you know, the answers, making sure that they are on topic or grammatically correct?
Of course. So the way the AI engine is built is it doesn't score free speech, right? So if you were to feed in my webinar as an example, it wouldn't be able to score it. What it scores is speech based on human input, right? So as an example, what we do is we train the scoring engine. So if you are asking a student to elicit responses for an essay or an argument that a student has to talk about, what we do is we get model answers, right? That range from the lowest to the highest end, and what you have is you have human markers that judge the student's responses. Those responses are fed into the AI-based scoring engine, and that's what the computer learns. So the computer isn't able to score free speech. What it is able to do is learn based on inputs that have been provided. And so what we do, for example, for an assessment like Versant, is we have loads of data points for thousands of data points for every assessment that we feed the computer with. And based on that, the AI-based capability is learning what a good answer looks like, what a poor answer looks like on multiple traits and multiple dimensions. It's not about keywords, so we're not feeding in keywords. We're feeding in good answers to poor answers, and the AI-based capability learns that, and that's how it scores speaking and writing responses. There's a lot of information on our website. There's videos about this, and I'm certainly happy to connect people with other experts within my team that can explain it in more detail. But in a nutshell, that's exactly what it is.
Fantastic. So there's a question regarding TOEFL and IELTS, and I guess the question is Versant used to replace those tests? I understand that TOEFL and IELTS are high security tests. See Versant used in that instance, or is maybe Pearson test of English?
So for high security, right? So when you look at if security is the most important thing, then we have a test called PT Academic, right? So it leverages the same scoring algorithm, right? So it produces scores within hours, and it's nearly a 3-hour long test, and it's delivered in hundreds of centers all around the world. And you sign in and you sign out. We check IDs. We record each testing session. We take the security very, very, very seriously. So if your goal is to have a highly secure test, then the compromise is that you have to take a longer test and you have a finite number of fixed locations where you do have to go into a test center to take that test. Versant does not do that, right? So if that's important, the test we recommend is Pearson Test of English Academic. What Versant provides is a different path for placement and progress monitoring and entrance testing. So it is a different test a use case, right? So, but once again, if you're looking for high security and you want absolute surety about who's taking the test and the sanctity of the testing environment in which they're taking it, then Versant is not the right product. But Versant does allow for flexibility, greater access, a shorter test, so you can make quick hiring decisions and quick placement decisions.
Great, thank you. So the next question is about whether the system, if the students are taking the test at home, does the system notify them that they're being monitored?
Yes. Okay. That's correct. So the student actually has to. So Versant has different. So the Versant English Placement Test has different versions, right? So the base version is there is no recording. So we don't record the session. and you take the test. You can take it at home, you can take it in your computer lab, and that's one scenario. Certainly, if we're recording the students' session, they are absolutely told and have to consent to it. And obviously, if they choose not to do it, then they don't take the test, right? Then we will give them a different version, which is not monitored and not recorded. And it's important to keep in mind, right? I mean, especially in these days, right? I mean, data privacy and security is absolutely critical. It's critical to us. It's critical to you. It's critical to your students and your customers, right? So nothing that we do is meant to compromise that. So we adhere to GDPR, data privacy and security standards, and that's the benchmark that we operate under.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. There are a lot of questions, Nick. One question is about the typing, I guess, activity type. So does the system score the speed of typing or just the output?
The system can score the speed of typing, but it doesn't feed into the result, right? Because what it's monitoring is it is monitoring the output that you are producing. We have tests like the writing test where you actually get a typing speed, and then you as the test administrator or acceptor can determine if that is a threshold that you care about. But our English tests, our Versant English Placement Test, use the output and the English production, and we score that, not the typing speed.
Great. Fantastic. Okay, so there is a question about whether this test is free. It is not. I don't know, Nick, if we want to just mention a few places where customers can get information about pricing and whatnot.
Yeah. So what you're going to do, what you're going to get later today is an email from Pearson, and what it's going to allow, what it's going to provide you is a free test that you can take. So the actual test that you can take, so you can experience it yourself, right? And you can do that in your home environment. Or whatever environment that you're in, but it isn't free, but it will have a link to how you can find out more about the test. The test is priced between $40 and $25, depending on kind of the scale and the magnitude of the purchase.
Okay, great. All right. I think that's all for the questions that I could see. Just to again remind everybody, you will receive a certificate of participation in the next 24 to 48 hours. So be on the lookout. It will come in an email. As Nick said, we will be sending you an email with a sample test that you can take and see what it's all about, and some useful links where you can find more information. So please be on the lookout, but be patient, because as you can imagine, it's a very, very busy time for all of us. There are a lot of fires to put out due to this crisis. So we appreciate everybody's patience. Also the recording, I think there were some audio issues, but I think for the most part it was okay. So that recording should be coming in your email very soon, in the next day. So with that, I think we're done. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Nick, for your time.
Of course. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe, and please take care of yourselves, your family, and your communities.
That's right. I couldn't say it better. So thank you, everybody. Good night, good afternoon, and stay safe. Goodbye.
Bye.